Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you had a good lunch. Got some food in you to sustain your brain so you can learn some more this afternoon with our next couple of speakers. I'm going to kick it right off with Sue Schniepp. So Sue Schniepp is one of my esteemed colleagues working at RCA. Distinguished fellow, I call her, distinguished colleague. So Sue's great. Sue's done a lot of work in the topic of quality culture, which is extremely important in our quality world. Her talk is building a culture of quality from the top down, a company-wide attitude of excellence. So without further ado, Sue, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me, and thanks to FDA News. As Steve said, I've been following the culture since 2014, since FDA came out with metrics. Now, I got a lot of slides to go through. I'm not going to dwell on them all. There's about 75, so I'm going to try to get through them. But in the past, I've taken quality culture from how it's tied to data integrity, how that's tied to aging facilities, CAPAs, and drug shortages. And I've poked at all of that. And in particular, the data integrity, because there were several regulatory authorities around the world that actually put out guidelines and guidances that referred to quality culture linked to data integrity. And you can find definitions of quality culture. So I don't know if I'm making impact with anybody on that front. So I thought I'd try a totally different approach. And that is really based on PDA's premise that attributes that the more mature your quality system is, the better your culture will be. And that was a study. I'm not going to go into it here, but that was a study that PDA did. And it linked, they worked with St. Gallen's, and they were able to show that there is a link between a mature quality culture and behaviors and attributes that are desirable, mature quality system, quality management system, and the behaviors and desirable characteristics that you want in a quality culture. So what I've done is, this is a diagram. All of this is PDA copyrighted material. And I guess I got to use it because I'm chair of the PDA. And I teach a class for them on quality management systems. But anyway, if we look at this as a wheel, you can see quality cultures on top, people come next, then documentation. And within that wheel, we have all the little documentation systems. So if we can poke at some of these documentation systems after we look at the culture and the people and how they fit in, we may be able to see where, or you may be able to see where your quality management system could be redesigned, made more robust, improved, to be able to achieve a desirable quality culture. I hope that's making sense to everybody. So let's just jump into it. I'm going to give you these throughout the presentation, a definition of where quality came from. So why is this important? Quality promotes the reliable and consistent production of safe drugs and helps maintain compliance with laws and regulations. That's pretty simple. And that's coming directly out of the FDA. And then this is one of their diagrams. Quality should be the foundation of all areas of a firm's operations. And you can see where they've tied this all in. Quality's at the center. And then there's packaging and production and all those areas around. So quality clearly is the driver. Now that's not what we're not saying that it's the quality department. We're saying that, quality, everyone, this gets to that concept of quality is everyone's job. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a brief what the hierarchical, and Steve knows this much better than I do, but there's the laws, then there's the regulations, then there's guidance, and then there's best practice. And that's kind of the hierarchy. The laws, of course, are the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And then the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, is where we find the regulations. Guidances are what the FDA issues to interpret some of the regulations that may be a little ambiguous or not quite so clear, or give you more detail, right? And then a best practice as people begin to incorporate some of these guidance recommendations, they may come across a best practice. And that's kind of how it goes. And best practices usually come from trade organizations like ISPE and PDA, where we're sharing amongst ourselves as companies to say how to do, put this in place, blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. So I just want to, here's just, you can do this exercise yourself. You'll get these, but you can see the section of 50 of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that talks about adulterated product, right? So the facility or controls used for manufacture, blah, 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 they have to conform with good manufacturing. All of you have seen this, I'm sure. What I want to point out is that the only unit required in a company really is your quality unit. And this interpretation here is supported in 21 CFR 211 regulations, right? Because now we have the responsibilities. It never in the regulation does it say, here are the responsibilities of the manufacturing unit. But here clearly we have responsibilities of the quality control unit, that written procedures and production and process controls, there has to be those general requirements for laboratory controls, right? So you can see where what we take from the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, good manufacturing practices, how it plays itself out in the regulations. Okay, so quality is not an act, it's a habit. Regulatory compliance is the concept of satisfying the regulations just to achieve a satisfactory inspectional outcome. What I'm going to get here is there's a difference between what I call regulatory compliance and real compliance. And this is all about regulatory compliance. In this kind of a model, you're going to have SOPs for things that you don't even do, or obsolete SOPs will be in existence. It's a Band-Aid. You throw a Band-Aid on, you may not get to the root cause of problems, right? That's regulatory compliance. Real compliance is where you have SOPs, processes, controls that reflect your operations, right? It's that 30,000 foot view of quality. And it when things go wrong, you understand their impact and how to handle them. Organizations that adopt this quality-based philosophy of real compliance, they really seldom experience the quality issues of a serious nature because their operations are reflected in their processes and procedures and SOPs, right? Okay, does that make sense? All right, now this is just an example of regulatory compliance versus real compliance. I think it's really important that you understand this because that could be one of the elements of your quality management system is your SOPs that you might be having trouble with because you don't have them properly written. My philosophy, and maybe Steve will chime in on this later or now, but anything over 10 pages for an SOP, that's a tome, right? That no one can follow. And I've seen SOPs, as I'm sure Steve has, that goes 60 pages long. That's not an SOP. That's a book. That's a novel. There's no reason for your operating procedures to be that long. To me, that's where you want to put all of this stuff to explain why you're doing what you're doing instead of just having it be the standard operating procedure. So regulatory compliance versus real compliance, you've got standard operating procedures in place versus SOPs that reflect your operations. You can have a complaint department or you can have employees that understand and are trained in complaint handling. You can have generic job descriptions or you can have job descriptions that reflect operations. You can see the difference. I would challenge you to go back to your own company and see if you have some of those elements going on where you're just regulatory compliance and not real compliance. Okay, so here we're interpreting 21 CFR 211.25, regulatory compliance is offering a customary annual training to employees. And real compliance is providing effective training to employees, assessing comprehension, and offering follow-up training as necessary. Right? It's you can call everyone to a lecture hall and say here, but really you need to measure their comprehension. You need to take that feedback too. Like if you're doing the annual training and there's a section of it where 10 people don't get it, don't understand it, can't interpret back, you need to go and look not only at their comprehension and retrain them, but your presentation. It may not be understandable, right? It may be confusing. So you're going to look both ways when you get that kind of feedback. Is my presentation clear? Am I communicating what I need to communicate versus, are they understanding it, or is there a lack of understanding on this one point, right? You're going to go both ways with your training. So let's take a look at what a quality system is. It's the formalized business practices. We know that, right? And you get this from the FDA guidance for industry quality systems approach to pharmaceutical CGMPs. It's important because QMS links all the parts of an operation together and gives that overall perspective of the performance, quality, and safety. It is that foundation. And if you make that robust, you can have a really high functioning quality culture. So if you look at this diagram, you can see the traditional basic quality approach focuses on the quality unit and its tasks and responsibilities. If you look at an integrated quality management system approach, look at it focuses on everything, the cost of quality, identification of the true root cause, continuous process improvement, management review programs. All of that is included in a robust quality management system. It's not just linked to quality control, quality assurance. So successful quality management systems share these following characteristics. And this is, they are a science-based approach. They have supportive management. They have the well-defined processes and products. Decisions are based on understanding of the intended use of a product. They have sound methods for assessing and reducing risks, proper identification and control of areas of potential weakness, systems for careful analysis of product quality. Okay, so that's a lot, I know. Foundations of an effective quality management system. We're going to start at the top of our little diagram, quality, culture, and people. All right, so quality culture, it's that behaviors and values, right? And it's important because commitment to quality culture starts with stops. Oh my God, what a slip. Starts with senior management, and it creates a transparent and open environment where information flows freely across all levels of the organization. Okay. Now let's take a look at what some of the characteristics are of a robust quality culture versus a poor quality culture. And anybody who's lived this, you know this, right? So in a robust culture, all personnel are aware and understand the quality expectations. In a poor quality culture, they rarely get discussed, particularly by senior management. Senior management leads by examples. Management in robust and in poor, management is resistant to quality initiatives. You can just walk down the list. Quality, and I don't mean the quality department, go to the second to the last. Quality is promoted through positive reinforcement, right? Performance metrics versus performance metrics do not support quality goals. But we're talking about quality, the big Q, not the department, right? And all of this, when we talk about quality culture, we are not talking about the culture of the quality department. We are talking about the culture of the company. And I don't want to So this is just my little vision of different levels that an organization could have when it comes to quality culture. And I divided them up into disassociative, reactive, proactive, interactive, and synergistic. And dissociative, you've got nothing, you don't care, you buy SOPs off the internet that don't reflect at all your organizations. In the reactive, you have some quality assurance, quality control functions. There's minimal training. And there's only little participation from senior management in quality initiatives. In proactive, you have an effective QA/QC program. You have good training. There is consistent senior management involvement. Interactive, the QA/QC function is focused on patient safety and product quality. Training programs measure effectiveness. Senior management is engaged. And synergistic is like everybody lives and breathes quality, and it's part of the company's strategy. Okay, so realistically, I think there are very few companies that have hit a synergistic level. This is where you would call up and say, hey, come and audit us. We are so ready, right? You're inviting everyone in to see how wonderful you are. Very few achieve that level. If you do achieve it, you need to maintain it, and that's hard. The sweet spot is really somewhere, in my opinion, between proactive and interactive. Okay, so that's what you want to strive for. And you really don't want to be in the dissociative or the reactive arena at all. This is just to iterate that quality and operations, quality cannot report to operations. Quality needs to be independent and needs to make the decision about product quality and patient safety independent of operational influence. So I just wanted to stress that. And then I want to walk through in this culture bucket, senior management responsibilities. And so this is how senior management responsibilities include the following things, right? They need to establish the communication and collaboration process throughout the organization. They need to be on top of that communication, remaining steadfast in the quality unit's independence. They can't compromise that. And make sure that quality unit is adequately resourced. Demonstrate a strong and visible support for the quality management system, and advocate continual improvement in operations. And then there's Steve Jobs, be a yardstick for quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. And that is really truly in our industry what is expected from our organizations. So I just want to go through some more senior management responsibilities because they actually have a lot if they're setting the tone. So they organize the quality, they should establish the quality policy, which describes the overall goals, right? Quality objectives and quality plan. And those should be visible to all employees, right? Not just kept to themselves. They need to be visible to all employees. And senior management responsibilities, again, you need to have them involved in the management review and the issue elevation. I think these are all simple. So this is what the CFR, I know you guys all know this. I'm breezing through it pretty fast. I'm just trying to give you a feel for the pieces and parts of the QMS system that you really need to take a look at if you're really wanting to achieve, nirvana when it comes to quality culture. So here's the pieces. The quality unit, again, there isn't anything in the CFR that says the operational unit. It's a quality unit. And they have that responsibility for approving or rejecting all processes and procedures, and their responsibilities shall be in writing. There's your SOPs. Quality expectations for personnel general. So each personnel engaged in the manufacture, process, packaging, or holding shall have education, training, and experience. What do you think this piece is leading us to? Here's another one: protective apparel, how to dress, personnel shall practice good sanitation, right? All of this is driving to excellence. So you can get, now that we're going to get into the documentation, we've talked about people responsibilities. We talked about senior management responsibilities briefly. We've looked at some quality culture levels. Let's talk about some of the documentation now that needs to reflect the people in the quality culture, because that is the foundation of a good management system. So how do you document it? Now, I know that people will say, well, quality manual is not required. And that's very true. There is no expectation in the Code of Federal Regulations for you to have a quality manual. However, for me, it lays out what are the fundamental practices and what you expect of your company's attitude toward quality in the quality management system. So that's what, and remember, the quality management system isn't just quality. I'm sure there are some companies where quality controls the QMS, but it's really the quality management system should span everybody, right? So I think it's an important document. You can disagree, you may not have one, but somewhere you need to have something that tells everybody what you're all about in terms of what your company's all about in terms of quality. So each one of the processes within QMS should have its own procedures. So examples of records within the processes, you got quality risk assessments, investigation, certainly PDCA, right? Temperature logs, batch records, right? You want to have those processes associated, or those areas associated with their own processes and procedures. I also recommend, again, not a legally required document, but I would have a master validation plan that says when I'm going to do things, when I'm going to calibrate, what's my schedule for this, how I'm going to make sure that nothing's out of validation, that all of my equipment is properly calibrated, validated, installed, whatever, right? This, and just so you have a roadmap. It's always good to have a roadmap. And then it's important that you have SOPs. And I think SOPs, again, you heard my, I think anything over 10 pages is a tome, right? So my simple, say what you do what you say, prove it, improve it. That should be your philosophy around SOPs. You say what you do, you follow what you said you were going to do, right? You prove it through your documentation, and you improve it through your continuous process improvement efforts. I want to, if you're in the SOPs, if that's one of your weak areas, right? I want you to open your minds that SOPs don't have to just be the written. They can be flowcharts, they can be written and pictures, or pictures. Don't limit yourself, but you can see the 7 basic format sections that I would include on an SOP. And I think it's important to have change history, because sometimes you do make changes to SOPs in response to regulatory authorities, and you want to capture that, because you don't want to come back and undo that, 2 years later. So let's look at foundations for quality management system processes. Okay, product knowledge, product understanding. It's important because that you understand these. The better you understand your product and your processes, the more efficiently and effectively you can address the issues and continually improve your process. So process performance, product quality monitoring, that's a system for monitoring process and product, KPIs it has, and you can see that's coming from ICH Q10. An effective monitoring system provides assurance of the continued capability of processes and controls to produce a product of desired quality and to identify areas for continual improvement. That's what it's all about, right? And here's some of, I'm sure you guys all know what ICH Q10 is. I pulled out some things that I thought were the most important from my perspective in establishing your quality culture. Facilities monitoring, so that's every aspect you're gonna, right, make sure that your facility is in a state of control, and to prevent contamination and support the production of products that meet established specs. Now this is where I'm gonna say, okay, everybody always says, what about the new CCS requirement in Annex 1? I wouldn't warp out about that if I were anybody, because I think you already have a lot of it, right? The CCS requirement in Annex 1, Contamination Control Strategy, requires you to link all the pieces and parts that you already have together, that you already have, like your smoke studies, like your particulate matter, like your airflow, like your environmental monitoring. All of that is stuff you already have if you're in the parenteral drug arena, or even if you're in, solid oral dosage form, right? You're going to have containment control. You're going to have all of this stuff. What CCS is asking you to do is to put it in one inclusive document so that you know how, if you have an air control problem, how it affects your environmental monitoring program. That's really what's going on there. That's very simplistic, so don't anybody quote me and say, there's a lot of people who are helping, design CCS, but to me, it's tying all those pieces together. So here are some of the things that you want to look at for your system monitoring. Quality risk management is the next thing I would pick on in your documentation to make sure it's robust, right? So it's important because quality risk management helps you ask the three fundamental questions: what might go wrong, what is the likelihood that it will go wrong, and what are the consequences? And then that lets you determine your best course of action. So taken right out of ICH-Q9, this is the diagram of quality risk management right out of Q9. So if you are weak in this area and your culture is weak in this area, pull this diagram out and understand it. So implementing quality risk management, it's important to remember the evaluation of the risk to quality should be based on scientific knowledge and ultimately linked to protection of the patient. Changes made as a result of QRM should be implemented through the change management system, right? And that's one of the elements that we would touch about change management system would, of course, be plan, do, check, act, a way to implement changes. So change management, it focuses on managing change to prevent unintended consequences, right? When making a change, it's important to ensure not only that it is appropriately implemented, but also there are no unintended consequences to the product or the process. You're going to watch for all of those things. And you're going to do that through, the plan, do, check, act, right? So when implementing a change, the effects should be determined by monitoring and evaluating elements that may be affected based on an understanding of the process. And here's some of the questions you might want to ask. And remember, every change must be carefully documented, reviewed, and approved by the quality unit. They don't have to, and here's what I view in change management. You have a number of, I divided them into 4 levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to obviously have a lot more trouble implementing level 4, but basic changes versus straightforward changes. So basic changes, it's a typographical error that does have impact, right? THERE versus THEIR. That could impact something when reading the SOP or whatever document it is. Straightforward change, let's say there's one change to a test method for one product. Complex change, there could be a test method change to that affects multiple products, right? That affect multiple products that might have to be implemented at multiple sites, and so on and so forth. And you can see as the complexity of change increases, So the ease of implementation, it becomes harder. And that's what you want to watch when you're implementing change, is make sure that you don't miss anything in those more harder to implement changes. So that leads us to continual improvement, right? These are processes must be continually monitored and improved to ensure quality is achieved and maintained. And you're efficient. If your process isn't improved, right, you could be having a lot of waste material, not getting to yield, right? So one of the ways to implement changes and continually improve your process, of course, is the plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, act, check. However you want to put it. There are other tools out there. You can use them. This is the one I like. It's easy to implement. It's pretty simple to understand. There are other ones, but that's the one I like. So part of what feeds into your plan, do, check, act, your continuous improvement, of course, is the state of your investigations in CAPA. All right, if you're not getting to root cause, what you're implementing is not going to fix your problem. You're going to end up in that Band-Aid situation. So you all know investigate, and I this is where I point, and I think it's still the same case today, is this is one of the weakest spots that the industry has. It continually ends up in the top 5 citations, 483 citations every year, right? For the last, God knows how, 10 years, I'll bet. So just keep in mind, corrective action is taken to fix an issue and ensure it doesn't reoccur. It is reactive. A preventive action is taken to prevent a potential problem from occurring, and it is proactive. And you can have a mix of it. You could take, let's say, a corrective action on one line, implement it, and then you can use that if you have a similar line where you haven't had the problem. You could use it as a preventive action for that line. Okay, so here's again, this is just the 21. I always know people always go, where does it say it in the regs? So here's where it says it in the regs, that you have to thoroughly investigate things before you release them. And a robust CAPA process will allow you to do all of these things, right? And I think of CAPA as a closed loop system. So you've got your inputs and your outputs, and that's where you get your continuous process improvement. Okay, so just some clues for how to do an effective CAPA investigation. A few more clues. You can go back and look at this in more detail. And let's go on to training, because without training, none of the rest of it's any good. So here's, everybody needs to be trained. This is a little bit why training is important, right? Let's get to the guts of it. I break training into initial training, which is the onboarding, basic understanding of the organizations, right? It describes the job duties, what their benefits are, right? And maybe an overall introduction to QMS. General requirements that in this training could include this list of things. The next thing is periodic training. Gowning, people who enter into the aseptic areas in parenteral drugs, they have to be constantly retrained on gowning. It's every 6 months, or if you've gowned and then there's been hits, microbial hits on your gowning, you'll get retrained. And that is to make sure, I think it's to make sure that you kept your skills to perform your job at a high level. And that's what retraining, and it's not, I don't mean human error retraining. We're talking about retraining that keeps someone's skills and knowledge to perform their job function at the highest level. Okay, so periodic training, here's some of the requirements, but you can add more. Continuing education, that's allowing people to go out and get new job skills to help, cutting edge technology that might be coming up for their positions. That's continuing education. this could be included in continuing education at your organization. Perhaps you're getting a different perspective outside the company of your job skills. And then, of course, additional training when you have gaps in a skill set and you need to help an employee, or they want to develop and go and do something else. That is where you could bring in additional training. Here's some examples for you. Okay, so QMS is important for inspections because a robust, I know we just kind of threw inspections in there, but all of this, you're going to get inspected on it. And I think Steve will tell you that the FDA is going to start inspecting, there's a program that they're going to start inspecting your culture. So it seems random, but it's really not. QMS is important for inspections because you've got clear, concise SOPs. You have an effective quality management system that allows you to efficiently and accurately present the data during the inspection, right? CAPAs have root causes. You have good response to complaints. All of this full functioning QMS allows you to handle things in inspection much more effectively than if you didn't have it, then you're stumbling around, right? So quality culture, we talked about this. I want to go back to attributes that have significant impact on personnel behaviors. Again, all of these attributes should be open and clear for people. And there are the negative attributes of not understanding your job and the positive attributes. This is all the compare and contrast. And remember, measuring quality culture, it's subjective. But the more you can beef up and make your quality management system robust, then you'll see the comparison. The more mature your system is, the better the behaviors are. These are common obstacles to a robust quality culture. And you can see right at the top, senior management rarely discusses. Quality is viewed as being the culture of the quality unit. All of those you've heard before. But if you do have a robust quality culture and everybody takes it to heart, this is just, if you catch a defect at incoming, right, you save $1,000. Defect caught at release, right, you can see how it increases. And this is because if you let something get through your system, through each stage of the process, to cull it out, it's going to cost you more money. So if you have a very robust system, you're going to catch this defect at the beginning and you're going to save yourself a lot of money. And that's one way that you measure. That's a good question. Let's deal with that. Let's get through the rest of this quickly, and hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes for, all right, I'm going to focus you on this again, okay? And those are the quality culture levels we talked about before. These are examples of how it would look, looking at two elements of a quality culture. In this case, I've dissociative senior management commitment to quality would look like there's no engagement. Training at this level, employees do not have necessary training to complete jobs. Okay, so if we take that through, here's the reactive. The examples I've given you, what reactive looks like for senior management commitment versus training, right? Not versus, and training. So I'm taking each level of those 5 levels, and I'm giving you 2 examples, one about senior management and one about training, okay? And you can cull these over. This is, again, the sweet spot. This is proactive, and this where you have consistent engagement from senior leadership, and you have a good training program. And then this is interactive, okay? So senior management's fully engaged. They love going to management review. And training, you have probably those 4 levels, right? And then this is synergistic, again, very tough to achieve, But if you get there, you really want to work to maintain it. A lot of this came out of the PDA tool. There is a quality culture guided assessment tool, right? And so you can see that we have the measurements for employee ownership and engagement, continuous improvement, technical excellence, leadership commitment, and quality and collaboration. And this is just to wrap you up. A strong commitment to quality from senior management will lead to a strong commitment to quality throughout the entire organization. It's good business practice. All right. And here's my final quote. Quality is always fashionable. And believe it or not, that's Boy George. And so with that, I think we can do a few questions. I know that was really fast, guys, but it was a lot. I wanted to kind of get that link.
I think you did well, Sue. And actually, I was multiple times when you were saying things, I agree with you. Like, for instance, Sue, like you mentioned, when you're talking about real compliance versus reg compliance versus real compliance, the SOP length, I completely agree with you. Absolutely. I think I mentioned it yesterday for day one of our summit, where I've seen it with FDA and outside of FDA now, where over time you think about it, and let's use FDA as an example. You have an inspection, you get some 483 observations. They're not too bad, but a lot of those responses you put in are, we're going to change the SOP, we're going to add this to the SOP, we're going to do this. So if you think about companies have been around for a while, over time you start out with those 10 pages, but then over time it starts adding up. And I've seen now where some companies are going back and looking at that, saying it's so overly complex. What can we do about it? And it's not easy to decomplexify, if that's even a word, these SOPs. But I fully agree with you. So I do have. We got one question up here. I want to make sure we get that in.
Two.
Phil asked, "What type of automations are you talking about with regard to change management?"
Okay, for automations with regard to change management, I'm looking at the electronic systems, right? I'm looking at putting it, the Passover data integrity, those integrity points. Where is your computer located? Blah, blah, blah. So automation to me implies you're an electronic change control, change management system. You have electronic batch records. You probably have a LIMS system. And all of those things are going to talk to each other. And so it's the control of the electronic signatures that I worry about in those systems. And that's the kind of automation. There are paper-based systems still out there. It depends on the size of the company and what kind of funding you have. But that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Sue. I think you focused at the beginning a lot on senior management, because I agree with you. They need to build, drive, and help that quality culture thrive. So I have you probably know I love to collect quotes I've been collecting quotes for years. So there's one here, and I want to hear your thoughts and if you agree or disagree, because I think I've been in these situations. I'm sure some of our audience has been in this situation. So it's a guy named Walton. I don't know who Walton is, but I love the quote. It says, "If you are a middle manager avid to begin a quality initiative in a company ruled by an executive from the old school, look elsewhere for a job." So they're saying, if you're stuck in that quality culture that's not, it's like I'll call it a non-quality culture, it's telling you to leave. Would you agree with that or disagree with that? Because I think that happens quite often.
I think it does happen quite often, but they could be stuck in a proactive, we didn't, those levels of maturity to me are not A, B, C, D. They're just levels, right? And how mature you are. And I sometimes think that, we don't always approach management the right way. And one of the things that drives them is money and business. If we can take our quality lingo and translate it into, here's how much money we're going to save, here's how we're going to drive the business to improve, that goes a long way in turning around. Why do I need to come to management review? Well, because we're going to talk about scrap rate and, loss of material rate that could save us money if we can solve some of these problems. You might get the management. It's when management won't listen to things like quality independently reporting, right? Not reporting to operations. That's the one you kind of got to consider. You walk away. But if there's that clear separation and quality is allowed to make the decisions about product reject, just some of the fussiness about why do I need to go to management review, you need to make it important to them and explain how they benefit from that, right?
Well said. Well said. Yeah, the cost of quality is something. I mean, you and I have talked with others on that for years now, ever since my time at FDA, and how you talk to management, like mentioned earlier today, like the cost of a recall. I mean, you look at that. I mean, some client, companies have tried to quantify that, and it's huge. I think we have time for one more question, Sue, and this is from Miss Rosa. She said, an organization that is interested in implementing a quality culture program, she says, is it recommended to do it by itself within the organization, or would it be necessary to have like a consultant supporting?
Oh, wow. I would get a consultant to help, but I would never position it. So you don't want to bring, this is our quality culture consultant. As you present this, you're going to roll it out. And this is why I brought this and did this with the QMS piece. You're going to roll it out like we're improving our training program. So the consultant's going to work with whichever function is responsible for training. And they're going to say, okay, we're going to roll out a new training program. And this is what it's going to look like. So that's when you would introduce, like if you don't have periodic training, or if you don't have outside training, seminars, webinars, training, you're going to say, we're adding a new element. You don't want to say this is our quality culture improvement, because then it becomes, 31 flavors of the month. And going back to Baskin Robbins, right? You don't want that. You want to be having you might have multiple consultants helping you, because each one might have expertise in a different area of the quality management system. And as you go about improving areas of your quality management system, right, then you'll improve your overall quality culture. And the thing I would not do is roll it out as quality culture initiative, because then everybody goes, oh, okay, another one, right? You want to roll it out as improvements to various sections of your quality management system.
I'm with you on that, Sue. And I would add to that, just from my own perspective, is, I mean, like you said, bringing a consultant, multiple consultants, because they all can have different viewpoints on anything. But like I tell clients now, you have to own this. If you don't own this, but like going back to the leadership, if employees don't see the leadership kind of owning it and running it and pushing it and everything, it's going to fall apart.
Exactly.
Well, we got more questions coming in, and we're a little bit over, but I'm going to ask you another question. Sure.
I went through it so fast, they're probably all confused.
So Christina asked, for the flow chart and picture examples, can you confirm these formats would still need to be included, the primary components of an SOP, like purpose, scope, responsibilities, references, or can they stand alone?
That's a really good question. I personally would put in the purpose, scope, and everything. I might have the diagram though. For the entire SOP, I would have everything. I would have all those elements. But I might post, if it's a gowning procedure, right? I might post the diagram on the wall of the gowning area. So just make sure that that's the controlled portion of the document. But what I'd want to present to the auditors, and there's ways to attach that too. You can have the entire SOP in one of those plastic folders, right, and flipped to the diagram page, so that the entire SOP is actually posted outside of the gowning door, but you've turned it to the actual diagram page. I've also seen companies where they've taken apart the SOP and put each page subsequently across the windows or the door, right? So there's a lot of ways to do it. But always, if it's an SOP and it's official, I would include all the elements needed for an official SOP.
Yeah, I think it depends on the company and how they want to do it. You can also drop it into like job aids or work instructions, right?
You can.
Yeah. Okay. Sue, thanks again. I took about 5 extra minutes of your time. Thank you for that. Thank you for a great presentation, and thanks for the audience for your questions. So we're going to jump to the next presentation now. And again, I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
Steve. Talk to you
Thank you,
soon.
ma'am.